Hi, it's me again, and I would like to welcome you to the new episode of our Middle-earth collectible card game deck building channel. Last time, we have showed Saruman around the Gap of Isen, and I hope you all enjoyed that deck. I would like to know how you fared, if you had more characters killed or corrupted, or if you maybe encountered no problems at all. But back to what you are all waiting for, today's episode. I have called it the Southern Empire. As you can see, we'll be playing a Fallen Wizard Pallando. To play a Fallen Wizard is quite challenging. Without the most powerful characters available, those with mind over 5, and a lack of reliable heavens. But you can also pick up resources from both hero and minion side. And also, some of the Fallen Wizard cards come handy too. But the smoothing of each Fallen Wizard deck takes a lot of time. And so it did take me a lot of time to prepare this one. Let's have a look at it. Firstly, let's have a short look at the basic rules. We are building for the 2-deck game with 30 to 50 resources and the same number of hazards, with 12 creature minimum. In this case, I have used the whole limit of 50 resources. You will see later yourself. The sideboard contains 25 cards. But we have here one more rule which we haven't discussed before, and that is how to play the minion agents. The official rules say they can be used as characters, but not in the starting company, and with restrictions of how to get them into play. I would be very much interested in how you play them. Do you use them as agent hazards? Anyone? Please let me know in the comment section. Our group of players have decided that we will simply not play them as hazards, and will include them as standard characters, which means that they can even be in the starting company, with 2 exceptions, the so-called black agents, Lobelia Sequila Baggins and Gollum. These 2 must be brought into play only at their home sites. Or maybe there could be a third version. Agents will be something like the hobbits are for wizards, either in the starting company or only playable at their home site. Again, please let me know what you prefer and how we shall approach the next decks. My personal opinion is they should be standard characters, especially for Fallen Wizards, who are playing a little bit for 2 sides already. But I'm interested in what you think and will build the future decks according to your wishes. Today, we'll follow the standard rules. Now we'll have a look at the map and the sites where we'll be operating. On the left-hand side, you can see 3 sites which are in different parts of the world, but which we need to include all the same, because simply we have to start our journey at the White Towers, and need somehow to get all the way down to the south. Therefore, there is one transition site, Isle of the Ulant. You can use the stones if you prefer. It's the same effect, more or less. And Isengard, as our closest Fallen Wizard heaven. From there, we will be operating until we build our own stronghold in Harad. As is quite obvious, we will be wandering through inhospitable lands full of danger, so be prepared for a lot of adventure, and may, for a long time, be without a close heaven. So, secrecy and unpredictability is of a great value here. To put it bluntly, this deck is based on surprise. Hardly will any opponent expect us to be constantly moving in these lands and venture even into Mordor itself. And therefore, most of his hazards will be worthless. On the other hand, if he knew where we will be operating and prepares for it, it will suddenly become highly challenging, to say at least. But even for that case, we are equipped. I have encountered both possibilities and was able to win the game, so there is no reason to be afraid beforehand. But keep your whereabouts secret, at least for the first game. Tell your opponent you are playing for Pallando. He will expect a deck built on faction play that can't be helped, but do not tell him where are you going to build your empire. Okay, let's see what we will be starting with. We are at the White Towers in Arthedain with 5 characters. I have chosen Pon Opper to be Pallando's apprentice. He needs also the trial of the voice cards to be playable. And so, we have all 3 stage points with him to start. Then there is Unborn with the Shadow Cloak, Yerek and Mionit. Then you can choose either Faramir or Asternak. Whoever you choose, give him the Horn of Honor as a minor item. Today I have chosen to start with Asternak. Still a little strange company for the White Towers, don't you think? Our first organization phase will go like this. Von Opper influences Unborn, and we are finished. Can't do anything more. The important part comes during the movement hazard phase. We have 2 possible routes to take. Either the sea route, Arthedain, Cardolan, Eriadoran coast and Andrast coast to the Isle of Ulond. This route has 2 wildernesses, and we do not need to venture into the dragon lair itself. But if you have a major item in hand, I recommend you to try the luck and play it, if possible. Or we can move by land, through Arthedain, Cardolan, Enedvite and Gap of Isen to Isengard, which leads us to our second heaven. But this route has 3 wildernesses, which means some very dangerous creatures could be encountered. You can choose yourself where you feel more comfortable. My advice is to try and play an item, if you have one in hand, at Isle of the Ulond. If you have none, have a look at what playable cards you have in hand, because the sea route can bring you in the next round to Pelargir, Tolfalas, Gobel Mirlond or Houten Gwanur. The land route leads only to Pelargir or Henet Anun. Now, when we get that solved, let's have a peek in the deck itself. As usually, we will start with characters. 2 copies of the Fallen Pallando are set in stone, but what about the rest? Only 2 hero characters have their home site in our region, Faramir and Vigavriel. In Faramir's case, we can assume that whereas his brother Boromir leads the armies of Gondor in a direct war against the power of Mordor, Faramir will help Pallando and take the more concealed route of alienating the subdued people of the south from Sauron and persuading them to seek independence from Mordor, while creating a buffer state against this might. Then we have minions and minion agents from the south, and 2 copies of Horsemen in the Night. A small but important note here. Do not forget the rule about possible tapping the character to cancel 1 automatic attack at his home site. It can be very useful, especially with Trellin or Tarsil visiting Minas Morgul. This hint can spoil some nicely built-up attack by your opponent and freeze his smile on his face. You can also spot that there are 3 characters with mind of 6 and only 2 Thrall of the Voice cards left. But you won't be probably able to get all the characters into play anyway, and if you do, it means that Pon Opper is either dead or corrupted, and his Thrall of the Voice card is back in the game. But overall, choose well who to bring in, because you, as Pallando, need to keep enough free general influence to protect the factions you have in play. Now to the point-giving cards we are to play. There is only 1 ally, Noble Steed, 4 hero factions, Men of Lebanon, Rangers of Ithilien, Southrons and Variacs of Khan, 1 minion faction, Black Númenorans, Scroll of Isildur and Palantir of Osgiliath as greater items, Torque of Hughes, Sword of Gondolin and Hauberg of Bright Mail as major items, 2 minion minor items, Sawtoothed Blade and a 2nd copy of Shadow Cloak, and at last but not least, the Wizard's Ring. We need to beef up Pallando, otherwise he won't survive in a dangerous place like this. The permanent event, Dark Numbers, should be easily playable anywhere in Mordor, shouldn't it? Other resources are a mix of fight-preventing cards with a lot of cards to help us actually defeat the monster, or to keep some characters untapped. Then some cards for influencing factions, especially gifts as given of old, which we can rotate as soon as Pallando gets his hood. while a threat or three and joined with a power will help us in this too, or could be used for passing the corruption checks. 2 copies of Marvel's Told and 2 of Voices of Malice come in handy when our opponent plays the hazards targeting the fallen wizard or some other unpleasant hazard surprises. And finally, there is the Eyes of Mandus card. This card helps us have the right cards at the right time in hand. And, what is important, Pallando, with his hood on, can rotate it back and forth between the discard pile and your hand. Useful, don't you think? And of course, do not forget that as Pallando, you can keep one more card than normal in your hand. Stage cards included in this deck contain 2 copies of Hidden Heaven. We need to change Houghton Gwanur into Heaven as soon as possible, because who would want to wander to Isengard every second or third turn just to heal? Guarded Heaven card to get rid of the second wilderness in our area. We don't need to encounter deep wilderness creatures at all. Before mentioned Pallando's Hood and Thrall of the Voice cards. Double Dealings, Truth of Doom to help with the general influence, and Wizard's Myrmidon. Now we are getting to the most important part, where to play each of the marshalling points giving cards. Again, are the sites in an alphabetical order for easy orientation. Some sites are mandatory and some can be swapped. For example, a major item can be played in Shelob's Lair or Nornia Camp. For a greater item, we can go to Seret Ungol, Minas Morgul or Tolfalas, while one of these sites remains for a major item only. With faction there is nothing extraordinary, only think of using a support card to influence them, as there is one for each faction. Black Numenorans are to be played using double dealings cards, but if your opponent made you use the minion size for border holes already, you do not need it. Noble Steed is playable at multiple sites as a supplement to a faction. Take good care not to discard Houghton Gwanur before turning it into your Hidden Heaven, and then you ought to keep one character there at all times, in order not to discard it or return it to the location deck. But you can play one major item there and later turn it into the Hidden Heaven, if you keep your company there. Later, add the Guarded Heaven card, and voila, you got rid of one wilderness. And of course, if you played one of the major items at the Isle of Ulond, you do not need to visit Shelob or Norniak Camp. As soon as your Pallando is in heaven and you have nothing better for him to do, tap him and bring some vital resources to the discard pile. The most important ones are the permanents which increase the amount of points you get from the played cards, namely Legacy of Smiths, Getter of Loyalties, and Great Patron. Staff of Pallando, Prophet of Doom, and Mischief in a Mean Way are not mandatory. If you feel so, use them. You can encounter a problem when you have to discard one of those key resources mentioned before. Therefore, there is way or things to nice it to return it back. Minion side, Tolfalas, does not count into the limit, just have it ready for a minion major item to be played there. Noble Hound and Noble Steed are important, otherwise you may not have any points for allies. 2 more factions, Hero Haradrim and Minion Umbaran Corsairs, 2 major and 1 greater item to have something to play in the second round, and Align Palantir, if you kept Palantir of Osgiliath unstored. When you have those in a new deck, you can plan where to go for them. When we have a look at the sides for the second round, you can see that Umbaran Corsairs will probably need double dealings, as did Black Numenorans before. But they get the bonus for Black Numenorans being already in play. And we should be having Gifts as Even of Old card always in hand, due to use of Pallando's Hood. Haradrim in Southern Oasis, again helped by Master or other card. Noble Hound can be played in any border hold, and Noble Steed in Houghton Gwanur, no problem there. Major items are for Shelob's Lair and Nornia Camp. Iron Crown for Minas Morgul. We probably have at least one character with Minas Morgul as a home site by this time of the game. And for Broad-Headed Spear, we'll go to Minion Tolfalas. If you have enough stage points, play Mischief in a mean way, probably on Warrior Camp or Hand at Anun, whatever you want. And that's all we have to play and can simply end the game. When we have finished discussing our own travels and adventures, we can have a look at what we will have in store for the amusement of our opponent. Because I always try to build a hazard deck to firstly be compatible with the play deck, and secondly to be usable in a single game against the deck we have built earlier in this video, we will unsurprisingly be building an orc-based hazard deck today. The main advantage of orcs is their playability, for the most part, and so you can get rid of them quickly. They also have a lot of strikes, and so press our opponent to tap many of his characters, and also, while throwing the dice many times, there is a good chance some of the strikes will eventually succeed. On the other hand, the creatures by themselves are weak, and there is a lot of kill points to be had. But the real fun begins when moving through Shadowland or Dark Domain, not to say entering Shadowhold or Darkhold. There, the power of our orcs increases. As an addition to the swarms of patrols, raiders, warriors, warbands, watchmen, guards, hobgoblins, and lieutenants, we have added 2 copies of Goblin Faces and 2 of Wolf Riders to add some sauce, and maybe some surprising element. The Great Goblin is playable not only in the Darkhold, but also against company and route between Rivendell and Lorien. And the one little Snuffler, just for the fun of it, and as a great prelude to Orc Warband. And as usually, we have here one Nazgul, namely Adunapwell, who could be tapped to force tapping the opponent's main killer, before striking with the Lieutenant, for example. As hazard events, we have an unexpected outpost 3 times this time. For maximal use of this, it is vital to keep Doors of Night in play. Therefore, it's there twice. Usual cards for strengthening automatic attacks, Master Disperses, and Foolish Words are nothing new. Siege we have discussed last time. It's nice as it creates an orc attack. Key card is Minion Stir, which adds strength and strikes to orc control attacks. 3 times in a deck, and with the unexpected outpost, we can keep beefing up our poor orcs more or less continually. Host of Bats and 2 or 3 times present just add to the mix. Pierced by many wounds is great for many strike attacks, which we should easily have. And finally, there are some cards against Fallen Wizards. Blind to the West and Ire of the East cancel effects which could hinder our well-prepared attack. Echo of the Song, Mask Torn, and Hard-Crowned Coat just completed his life even more. As hazard events, we have an unexpected outpost 3 times this time. For maximal use of this card, it is vital to keep Doors of Night in play, therefore it's there twice. Usual cards for strengthening automatic attacks, Master Disperses, and Foolish Words are nothing new. Siege we have discussed last time. It's nice and it creates an orc attack. Key card is Minion's Stir, which adds strength and strikes to orc control attacks. 3 times in a deck, and with an unexpected outpost, we can keep beefing up our poor orcs more or less continually. Host of Bats and 2 or 3 times present just add to the mix. Pierced by many wounds is great for many strike attacks, which we should easily have. And finally, there are some cards against Fallen Wizards. Blind to the West and Ire of the East cancel effects which could hinder our well-prepared attack. Echo of the Song, Mask Torn, and Hard-Grown Coat just complicate his life more and more. As usually, when you have no hazards or would like to wait, halve your opponent's hazard limit for 1 round and bring the sideboard hazards into the discard pile. More or creatures to replace the defeated ones, 2 support cards for them, and 3 cards to hit specifically a Fallen Wizard. Nothing complicated. Just draw and play when you can and hit hard. We have come to the end of today's video. Resources and hazards were discussed, strategy mentioned. Hopefully it was an inspiration for you, and I'm sure you have some ideas what you would do differently and what you would adjust. Share those in the comment section, and we can discuss them next time. We may even dedicate one episode just to answering your questions and discussion over mentioned adjustments. I'm really looking forward to it. If you subscribe and hit the like button, it would be very appreciated, as each takes just a second to do and is of immense help. Also, we decided to announce a present for one lucky person who is subscribed, likes at least one of our videos, and leaves at least one comment. The prize you can choose from is either one unopened Wizard Starter Pack for someone who wants to begin with this game, or one of the Nazgul Hazard cards of his choice for the experienced ones. We will allot the winner in September, so you have the whole summer to get into this game. By then, enjoy the game, let us know how you fared. In our next video, we will be exploring the Misty Mountains and the remnants of Arnor under the guidance of Alatar. See you next time.